Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I come from a pretty privileged background in Finland. My dad owns a successful beauty company that he built from the ground up. And yeah, I'll admit I'm a bit spoiled. But I try not to be one of those obnoxious rich kids. The only thing I really ask my parents for is travel opportunities. I love experiencing new places and cultures, and thankfully my parents are supportive of that. This crazy incident happened when I was 17 during one of our family trips to the United States. We were at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, dealing with a 5-hour layover before our connecting flight to Seattle. My parents decided to head to the business lounge to relax, but I wanted to explore the airport a bit and get some coffee. I found myself at Starbucks, and after getting my drink, I settled down at a table with my MacBook Pro. It was only a week old, an early birthday present from my parents, and I was excited to work on this really interesting school project about renewable energy sources. I noticed this woman in her 40s with a young boy, probably around 7 or 8, ordering at the counter. They got their drinks and sat at a nearby table. The kid immediately spotted my laptop and came running over, excitedly shouting about the computer. When I saw his enthusiasm, I asked if he liked computers. He eagerly confirmed and asked if we could play something on it. I told him we could, but I'd need to check with his mom first. When I asked her for permission, she barely looked up from her phone and dismissively gave her approval. The kid was actually pretty sweet. We spent about an hour playing educational games and watching funny YouTube videos. He was especially fascinated by a coding game I showed him. Then my mom called, asking me to join them in the lounge. I told the kid I had to leave and wished him a good trip. He asked where I was going, and I explained that my parents needed me at the lounge. He thanked me sweetly for playing with him. When I started packing up my stuff, his mom suddenly snapped to attention when I reached for my MacBook. She demanded to know what I was doing. When I explained I was just packing up my things, she insisted on knowing why I was taking the MacBook. I told her it was mine, but she stated that it wasn't, and demanded I give it back. Her kid started getting really upset at this point. He tried telling his mom that the laptop wasn't theirs and begged her to leave, but she just told him to be quiet. When I tried to explain again that this was my laptop and I was leaving, she started screaming that I was stealing her MacBook. A Starbucks employee quickly came over to investigate the commotion. When asked about the problem, Karen claimed I was trying to steal her MacBook. I denied this, and the kid backed me up by telling the truth about whose laptop it was. The employee warned her that they'd have to call security if she didn't return my MacBook immediately. But Karen wouldn't back down. She kept insisting it was hers and even tried to grab it from my hands. The employee called airport police, who showed up within minutes. They reviewed the security footage, which clearly showed me sitting there with my laptop before the kid ever approached. The kid kept telling the truth too, bless his heart. The police arrested Karen for attempted theft in an airport, which apparently is taken very seriously. My parents pressed charges, and with a clear video evidence and multiple witnesses, she ended up getting sentenced to 6 months probation and had to pay a hefty fine. I felt bad for her kid, who was clearly mortified by the whole thing. Before leaving, my parents arranged with the airport staff to have a new tablet delivered to him, something to keep him entertained during what was probably going to be a very awkward trip. We also made sure to tip that Starbucks employee generously for handling the situation so professionally. The rest of our trip to Seattle was thankfully uneventful, but this experience taught me that entitled people can show up anywhere, even in international airports where security cameras are everywhere. The kid's reaction was a silver lining though, proof that sometimes apples do fall far from the tree. This happened a few years ago during our town's annual Canal Days Festival, which is this big celebration of our town's founding along the historic canal. It's usually a pretty fun event with rides, food vendors, and baseball games. This year was special for me because I was finally old enough to go by myself. I had just gotten my first phone for my 11th birthday, and my parents decided I was responsible enough to enjoy the festival independently. I was beyond excited about this new freedom. I spent the whole morning having a blast, going on rides with my friends and exploring all the festival had to offer. By lunchtime, I was starving. There was this awesome hot dog and burger stand that always shows up for the festival, so I decided to treat myself to a burger, fries, and a soda. I found a nice spot to sit and was just enjoying my meal when I heard someone clearing their throat behind me. I ignored it at first, but then they did it again, louder this time. When I turned around, I saw exactly what you'd expect. A middle-aged woman with that typical Karen haircut, wearing a flowery dress and a sun hat. She was staring at me like I'd committed some terrible crime. When I politely asked if I could help her, she responded with disgust, asking if I was really eating a burger. I offered to tell her where I got it, thinking she might want one, but she quickly shot that down. She proclaimed that, unlike me, she didn't eat meat, saying it with such contempt you'd think I was committing a crime. I asked her what she wanted, trying to keep my voice polite. That's when she demanded I stop eating what she called filth, explaining that her family followed a strict vegetarian diet because they weren't murderers like me. At this point, her two kids walked up from the baseball fields where they'd been playing. They looked about my age, maybe a year older. The first kid asked his mom what I was eating and she replied with obvious disgust, calling the burger disgusting. The kid agreed with her, proudly declaring that at least they ate healthy and didn't kill animals. While this was happening, I noticed her second kid had quietly moved behind me and was reaching for my food. When I confronted him about what he was doing with my food, he smugly replied that he was just getting rid of what he called garbage. I told him he couldn't do that since I had paid for it with my own money, and he didn't get to decide what happened to it. He just scoffed in response. I was getting really annoyed at this point, so I decided to be a bit petty. I turned back to my burger and took the biggest, most exaggerated bite I could, making sure to really show how much I was enjoying it. That's when things got crazy. Karen actually slapped the burger right out of my hands. I was so shocked that I yelled at her and called her a witch, though I wanted to say something much worse. Her first kid immediately tried to jump me, screaming about how I disrespected his mom. Thankfully, I knew how to wrestle from school sports, so I managed to defend myself and push him off. Unfortunately, he fell pretty hard and ended up hitting his mouth on the ground, which resulted in some broken teeth. A police officer came over when he heard all the commotion. Karen immediately launched into her version of events, telling the officer that she was just trying to have a peaceful conversation with me about my dietary choices when I supposedly became violent and attacked her son. The officer turned to me next and asked for my side of the story. I explained that I was just eating my lunch when this woman started harassing me about eating meat, and that when I didn't stop eating, she slapped my burger out of my hands. I added that her son only got hurt because he tried to attack me and I had to defend myself. The officer said he would need to speak with some witnesses about this. I asked if I could grab my phone really quick, and that's when I remembered something amazing. I had been recording video clips of the festival to send to my friend who had moved away last year. He always loved Canal Days and wanted to see how it was going. My phone had captured the entire incident. I ran back to the officer and showed him the recording. Karen's face went completely white when she realized what was happening. The video showed everything: her harassment, her slapping my food away, and her son attacking me. After watching the video, the officer told Karen that she was under arrest for assault and filing a false police report. He added that she would also be responsible for reimbursing me for the food she destroyed. Karen tried to defend herself, claiming she was just trying to protect her children from seeing such disgusting behavior, but the officer advised her to remain silent. She ended up getting banned from all future town festivals, had to pay a fine, and was ordered to take anger management classes. Her kids were sent to live with their dad for a while, who apparently was a much more reasonable person. The festival organizers felt so bad about what happened that they gave me a free meal voucher for the rest of the festival. I made sure to get another burger and enjoyed every single bite. You know those tales about entitled people that seem too outrageous to be true? Well, I used to think the same until yesterday's incident at the local department store. Let me give you some context. I'm a father of 5 wonderful kids, and my wife and I try our best to balance everyone's needs. December had been rough on us. The whole family caught this nasty flu that kept us homebound for weeks. With the holidays approaching, we still hadn't managed to get our kids presents for their friends. Finally, feeling better, we split up the shopping duty. My wife took 2 of our kids, while I took our 11-year-old daughter and 2 sons, ages 6 and 4. Now, about my 6-year-old, he's on the autism spectrum. He's incredibly bright, actually a grade ahead in school, but he needs constant stimulation to stay focused. We've been working with specialists to help manage his behavior when he gets overwhelmed. For this shopping trip, we told him he couldn't bring his tablet, but could choose any toy for entertainment. He picked his favorite puzzle cube, one of those complex ones he can solve in minutes. So there we were in the toy section. I had my 4-year-old picking out a gift while my daughter watched her autistic brother. I only turned away for a moment when I heard him scream. What I saw next was chaos. Some kid had grabbed my son's puzzle cube, and my daughter was trying to get it back. She was yelling that the toy wasn't his and demanding he let it go. She managed to retrieve the cube, but then this kid, this absolute terror, started hitting me when I stepped between them. I pushed him back gently and loudly told him that hitting wasn't allowed. The kid darted past me and went after my daughter again. She's not one to back down, and when he came at her, she pushed him down the aisle. Other shoppers were starting to gather around, and when the kid tried to attack again, my daughter knocked him down a second time. That's when Karen appeared. Instead of controlling her child, she grabbed my daughter's hair. Big mistake. See, what Karen didn't know was that my daughter's been training in boxing for 3 years. My girl spun around and landed a solid punch to Karen's stomach. When Karen tried to retaliate, my daughter gave her a swift one to the face. While I was restraining the still aggressive kid, a kind woman had gathered my sons to keep them safe. Karen was on the floor crying dramatically when we heard this deep voice behind me. It was Karen's husband offering to take control of the situation. I was confused at first, and he explained that the troublemaker was his son and the crying woman was his wife. Karen started screaming at him from the floor, hurling insults. Her husband told her to get up and apologize, warning her that they might press charges if she didn't. The police arrived pretty quickly, and the security footage told the whole story. Karen was arrested for assaulting a minor. Her husband made their son apologize to everyone, and the store manager practically fell over himself, apologizing to us, even giving us a discount. That kind woman who helped, she turned out to be a special education teacher. Talk about perfect timing. Later we learned from the husband that he'd been documenting Karen's behavior for months, planning to divorce her and get full custody of their son. He admitted he never expected her to do something this extreme, but it actually helped his case. The whole incident lasted less than 5 minutes, but it was enough to change several lives. My daughter got to pick out any game she wanted, a reward for protecting her brother and handling herself so well. 3 months later, Karen's husband won full custody, and she's been ordered to attend anger management classes. Their son is doing much better now, especially since starting sessions with that special education teacher who helped us that day. I grew up in upstate South Carolina, where my family has lived in this cozy 2-story house since I was in middle school. My dad's a civil engineer and my mom works in real estate. They're both really detail-oriented people who take pride in maintaining our home. That's probably why we decided to do a complete renovation of the house back in 2018. The whole process took about 3 months. We got everything done, new kitchen cabinets, hardwood floors throughout, stripped all the old wallpaper, and gave every room a fresh coat of paint. The painting crew we hired was this small local business, just 3 guys who've been working together for years. They did an incredible job paying attention to every detail and even helping us pick out the perfect shades for each room. After they finished, they asked if they could put up a small advertising sign in our yard for a few days. It was just one of those basic plastic signs. Nothing fancy. My dad, being the supportive person he is, especially towards small businesses, agreed immediately. He even showed them the best spot to place it where our sprinkler system wouldn't get in the way. 2 days later, we got this letter in our mailbox. The Homeowners Association had written to inform us that our property was violating Section 4.3 of the neighborhood bylaws, which apparently didn't allow any signs to be displayed for more than 24 hours. Now, my dad's generally a really nice guy, the type who'll help neighbors move furniture or clear their driveways after a storm. But he's got this one quirk. He absolutely hates being told what to do, especially on his own property. The moment he read that letter, I could see that familiar glint in his eye. He and my mom spent that evening going through the bylaws with a fine-toothed comb. Sure enough, they found exactly what the letter mentioned, but my dad wasn't satisfied. He kept reading, making notes, highlighting sections. That's when he found the loophole. A few days later, this Homeowners Association representative showed up at our door. She was probably in her 50s, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a business meeting. She asked about the sign in our yard, and my dad politely invited her to talk on the porch. They stood out there for what felt like forever. The representative did most of the talking while my dad just stood there, nodding occasionally. She reminded him about the violation notice they'd sent, and he just kept quietly agreeing. When she insisted that the bylaws clearly stated no signage could remain in a yard for more than 24 hours and asked him to remove it immediately, he finally spoke up. My dad explained that the sign was no longer in our yard, it was in our flower bed. When the representative said she didn't see how that made any difference, my dad pointed out that sections 4.1 and 4.2 of the bylaws specifically distinguished between yards and flower beds as separate areas. He explained that Section 4.3, which they had cited, only mentioned yards and made no mention of flower beds in that certain clause. The representative stood there for a moment, opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. She left pretty quickly after that, and we never got another complaint. We kept that sign in our flower bed for exactly 30 days. My dad even marked it on his calendar. When the painting company came to pick it up, they couldn't stop laughing when we told them the story. They ended up getting 3 new clients from our neighborhood during that month. All of them had seen the sign in our flower bed. At the next Homeowners Association meeting, they tried to revise the bylaw to include flower beds. But since my mom works in real estate, she knew that any major bylaw changes required a 75% vote from all homeowners. The revision only got 62% support. I guess we weren't the only ones tired of the Homeowners Association's nitpicking. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.